that a Keyblade on the back of your computer?
Probably. Yes.
Oh, from King
I
of
like
Brass.
your stickers. I like how you put the Suncoast sticker over the iron.
Yeah.
That looks pretty cool.
Stacking.
Yeah, so here we are. We're here on our good old terminal. So how do we create projects already? We use like yarn, create, React app.
Not even yarn, it's just create React app.
Oh, you actually installed the package?
Yeah.
Okay.
Make directory unit 3.
Yeah. You can organize however you want. But now here, so in .NET we have the .NET CLI. Using the actual, can you all see that all right?
Yes. .NET.
Yeah, so it's a little high. Is that better? Yeah, so .NET CLI, .NET is now your keyword. That's kind of where you'll live the next couple weeks.
So type to do that.
It's not going to work for y'all unless you installed it. So I generally, for the .NET portion, do not recommend coding along. There's a lot of stuff here that's going to happen. And .NET is a language that once you kind of get tripped up once, like things stop compiling and it's not as friendly, it kind of snowballs on you. So like, take notes, follow along, be active here. So let's just check this out real fast. So .NET gives us a whole bunch of tools that we can use to do stuff with, right? I just did .NET-H to get help. One cool thing about the .NET CLI is that every command inside of this tree, you can just do a -H, and you'll see what are the options and what you can do.
That's awesome.
So as you look at this thing, we're going to zone in on the very first one, .NET New. So let's see what we can do here. .NET New. And we have, zoom out a little bit. Can you all still see that?
Yeah.
So these are all the basic types of .NET projects that we can start off with. You'll see a lot of web stuff, you'll see some class libraries, you'll see some testing, a whole bunch of stuff that we'll get to. But today, and whenever I like to learn a language, I always think, what's the simplest thing I can work with? Right? What's that one what's that hello world? What's that console.log program that I can actually work with? In .NET, and what we'll be working with in the next 2 days is what's called a console application. What a console application is just it's a program that runs inside of the terminal, and that's it. Nothing too crazy. So we're going to do .NET New console, and then we're going to give it a name, so it puts it inside of a folder. Sound good so far? So .NET New console and name hello world. You'll notice first off that I'm naming my project with Pascal case. So
Pascal case.
yes, have you heard of camel case?
Yeah.
What is camel case?
One uppercase,
Middle letter.
second
I
letter.
guess the difference would be that you capitalize the first letter.
Yep. So in camel case, the first letter is lowercase and all the rest are capitalized. Pascal case, just the first letter is capitalized, and then every word is also capitalized. Very close to a camel case. Just
First letter is anything different.
yeah, first letter is the only thing that's different.
Does it matter which we use, or is this like best practice?
This is best practice. This will also give you less headaches down the line. Because what that does, this has now created me a new console application, and the project's name is Hello World. So we'll see that Hello World come up in many different places. So that just kind of makes our naming conventions inside of C# a bit cleaner and a bit easier. Sound good so far?
Yeah.
All right, so let's see. It has created for us a folder called Hello World. So we're going to head into that, Hello World. Inside that, we now have 3 different things. We have a .cs proj, we have a .cs file, and we have a folder called object. So object is a folder that we traditionally do not care about. It's used in the compilation process, and we can actually delete it and it'll come back, and that's okay. So we just kind of put that like, okay, it's there, cool, whatever. Your .cs proj, you can think of like your package.json. You kind of rarely ever go in there. What it does, it lists out what dependencies your code has, what libraries you've added, what's its runtime, what's it called, stuff like that. You're not really in your package.json a lot, right? If you are, something's probably gone wrong, right?
I'm trying to deploy.
Yeah, like there's some like weird mumbo jumbo happening, like same thing with this. It's just kind of there. It describes your project. The core of your project here is in program.cs. .cs C# file. So let's open up this directory. So is everyone on VS Code?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mine seem a little clunky. Is there a way to clear it out?
I don't know what clunky means.
Like the scroll takes a while to respond sometimes, and I'm typing. And
How many extensions do you have plugged in?
Like 5 or 6.
Okay, we can look at it.
Sometimes it works fine. Sometimes it takes a while to respond.
We'll look at it.
Do you use Docker a lot?
We will. But yes, yeah. Docker is how we'll be deploying apps.
I've seen it a lot.
Yeah. So bonus is that one topic that we'll hit that they won't hit is Docker, which is awesome.
Would you repeat that?
Oh, one thing that we'll hit
That Ruby won't?
they will not hit formally is Docker.
Are they still going to use Docker?
So what it comes down to is deployment. We want to give you all free deployments, right? Like that's kind of the thing. We use, right?
Yeah, like that.
Yeah. So Azure is kind of like the big like de facto .NET deployment place. The downside of that is that it's cloud hosting, which is awesome, which is a plus side. But the downside, A, you need a credit card to sign up. Downside B, it's easy if you don't know what you're doing to rack up a lot of charges.
Yeah.
Even though there's free charges, there's free services, it's kind of hidden because they want to give you the best developer experience and those cost money. We don't like that. But Heroku, have we ever heard of Heroku before?
Yeah, it's very
Her-
yes.
Yeah. Heroku is a free hosting. They have a nice free tier. It's very developer friendly. Heroku has built-in Ruby support, but recently Heroku as a company is like, you know what? Instead of adding new languages to our offers, we're going to support something called Docker. Docker at its high-level view is an easy way to deploy any language to anywhere. It's pretty much a self-contained. It describes the environment that needs to run in, and so whenever you deploy a Docker file, you deploy the app, and then it loads up all the dependencies and everything you need to run the app, and runs the app. So it actually doesn't matter what language that you run the app in; it's always going to work. So through Docker, we can run .NET Core apps on Heroku. So we'll be touching Docker a little bit, like how it works, what it is, and how to actually use it. So they don't need to, so they might touch on what it is, but like we'll actually be like working with it, which is a really good resume line for the record.
Docker is something that we'll see in the workforce.
Huge.
Okay.
You'll hear it. It's a really awesome buzzword. It's a very good modern deployment, which .NET Core flows nicely into. So you'll see the little Docker whale floating around. So here's the new .NET app. You notice how there's an extra folder, a bin folder. That's something with compilation and stuff like that. That's where our DLLs will end up once we run it. You'll always get this. This is just VS Code helping you out a little bit. Just click yes. It'll add some stuff to kind of help make your life a little bit easier. The only extension that you need to download, and it's also tonight's homework, is this C# extension. This is the one that gives you like C# IntelliSense and everything like that. Like this is like the thing to have. This is built by Microsoft, powered by the recommendation engine. It's the same one that's in Visual Studio. You asked me what's the difference between VS Code and Visual Studio. So Visual Studio is a full-fledged IDE. As you all saw the other day, it has everything. Like literally everything inside of it. And that's fine. That is a good developer experience. You know, some people like that. But it's a heavyweight editor. It loads up everything, even though you're really only going to be using about 10% of its features. Me, as a developer that's been working in the industry for 10 years, I've only used maybe max 15 to 20% of its features. Like, there's a whole bunch of stuff that I just haven't got to. There's been no reason for me to get there. On the other side of that, there's something called a lightweight editor. That's the Atom, the Vim, the VS Code, the Sublime, the stuff that's like, give me only what I need and that's it. Around the same time the .NET Core was a renaissance, Microsoft's like, hey, people don't like Visual Studio, it's too heavy. Let's produce a new IDE, VS Code, that's lightweight and just what developers want.
IDE.
Integrated development environment. So it's like, this comes from studying and working with developer habits. So this is very like, that's why we have like integrated Git. That's why we have search that's built right in. That's why we have IntelliSense built in for the languages that we use.
So I can get rid of the Visual Studio and just keep using code.
Yep. Are you on Windows?
No, I'm on Mac, but I just downloaded Visual Studio because that's what I had used all them years ago.
Yeah, Visual Studio on a Mac. I gave it, honest God, I gave it 2 shots. 2 honestly good shots at different times. Because like, yeah, Visual Studio on a Windows machine, it's glorious. On a Mac machine, it's terrible. It's still terrible. It's still missing a lot of features.
So should we install this then?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I apparently also have a C# snippets. I don't
Would
know
you
what.
recommend that?
I'm going to say yes because I have it, but
Cool.
with a very much so like I'm shocked that I have it.
All right.
So anything else? Anything? Nope. That's it. What is it? So now that we've looked at some stuff, let's check out our Git repository, our Git status real fast. Notice there's a lot of stuff here, right? Well, we care about this, we care about this, we care about this stuff too. We don't really care about all of this stuff. You know why we don't? Because these are artifacts from the building process. So these will be different every time we build the app. So every time I build it, which you can imagine is going to be building a lot, every time y'all build your apps, it's going to be happening a lot. These are going to be overwritten. So we really don't want those in source control, right?
No, I guess not.
No, we don't. So have you gone over what a git ignore file is?
No.
So there's something you can add to a project. It's called a git ignore file.
That's what a lot of our projects are using.
Yeah. Yep.
I've seen it. I don't know if that's.
Yeah, so I'm going to create a Visual Studio ignore file. I have an extension for that called, it's like git ignore templates.
Should we install that as well?
Yeah, I recommend it. But what it does, it will list out the files for GitHub to ignore. So it's like, hey, anything that matches these patterns, just straight up ignore. So if we look inside of this, here's that bin folder and object folder that we were talking about. It's like, hey, these are now inside of our git ignore. We have not committed these or done anything with source control. Hey, Git, ignore these. Don't put them in source control. Don't push them to GitHub. Don't track for changes. Just, for lack of a better term, fuck them.
Why are they broken up in brackets like that?
Oh, this uses a special language that says, hey, give me all the bin folders. It could be a capital B or a lowercase b. So if we look at our GitHub, it's a lot smaller now. So first commit .git.
Or is there extension?
I don't see the git ignore on the extensions.
You get it from Code Zombie? Or get it from Hassan Ali?
I got it from Hassan Ali. I like this one better. The other one has a lot more downloads and installs, but they do the exact same thing. I forget why I didn't like that one, but I didn't.
We trust you. Take it.
And through working with it, I found that this one actually works better in practice than the other one, but
It's weird, mine's already downloaded.
Mr. Ali, thank you.
yeah. So we've spent a lot of time. It's already up. So let's actually look at some C# code. Does that sound good?
Fantastic.
Yeah, so inside, let's open up. Here is the Hello World program of .NET. So a couple things are going on here. Let's start off at the top and work our way down.
Okay.
So at the top, we have a using system. We have a using statement. You know how in JavaScript and React, we had imports?
Import from.
Yep. So the same idea is that we have a chunk of code somewhere that we want to use someplace else. In JavaScript, it's import, and C# it's using. Now that thing on the other side is called a namespace. So you know how in JavaScript you like export modules and stuff like that? Well, now we deal in namespaces. You can kind of think of like a namespace and modules as kind of being the same thing. It's one of those like function versus methods. Like they're practically in real life the same thing, but they're actually different. But for our purposes today, same thing. Which brings us to the next line, namespace. You see it's a namespace, hello world. That's saying that, hey, this chunk of code is inside of something called a namespace. So if I wanted to, I can create a new C# app and say, hey, using hello world, and I'd have access to everything inside of this code base. So going down a bit deeper, what does that mean? What things do I have access to? Well, here I have one class. We know what a class is, and it's called program. So every C# program has some sort of starting point. Even though once we get to web servers, they'll always be running in the background. They always have like what's the very first line. And in C#, we're looking for a class called program with a static void main. That's just is what it is. Don't change them, don't modify them, just be like, yep, it is what it is.
It's like our main function in JavaScript.
Yeah. You can rename it, you can do a bunch of stuff to fancy rename it, make your life a living hell. Don't. So program, class program, static void main. We'll dig into static and void in like the next 2 lectures, so we'll just kind of accept those for right now. Also string brackets args, we'll kind of accept that for right now. And now inside of it, this is where we actually write our code. Can everyone see this right? Is this a good font size?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. I don't have to like zoom up to like where it's like crazy big and actually use my entire screen. I'm so happy. So
Did you have to do that in the other room?
yeah, I have to like zoom it up to like this, which doesn't look bad up here, but like you could read that from across the room.
I can see it.
So it's just like,
Is that a tin on your computer?
oh yeah, that's it.
Did you put a plastic tin on?
No, it's,
No,
it's a feature built in. I think your computer's actually too old for it.
What is
And
it?
it's called Flux.
Yeah.
Oh, you're using Flux.
I'm using Flux.
Not built-in one.
Can't see it.
I also have the turned in, the built-in one turned way down too.
Mm.
So that's turned down.
So it's like
Flux is-
double.
Yeah, so nice.
UX?
Yep. So let me reset my zoom real fast. Bam. That was where it was. So yeah, so our console.writeLine is the exact same thing as console.log. It'll print it out to the console. Whatever we put there, it'll convert it to a string and print it out. So let's run this and see what happens. Let's change this.
Don't you need the read line, or it's just going to close?
What?
You don't need the read line.
You do not need a reline, but it will close.
What are class and static void again? I'm so sorry.
For right now, just accept that class holds your main program, and static void is where the actual code will run.
Okay.
For right now, just kind of internalize that. We'll kind of expand on what those mean next couple of days, probably the next hour.
Okay.
But for right now, that's what it is. The class is the same idea from JavaScript. It's a class. It's an object. So let's save that. Now let's go and run it. I like using the integrated terminal here, just because it's right there. So now to run it, .NET, it's kind of where we are, run. Now what this will do, this looks at your code, it compiles it, so it refreshes, it recreates the DLLs and binaries and everything like that, and then it runs it. So it's doing the building, compiling, and running for you all in one step. Hello world, welcome to .NET. And then it's over. Program's done. So if I wanted to just build it, because we do, we will just need to build it sometimes. .NET build. Just say, hey, build succeeded. So yeah, here we have. So now we have a language. We have code that we can write. So what things of JavaScript do we have? We have objects. We got functions.
Arguments?
Variables, what?
Arguments?
Functions with parameters. Variables, we have loops, we have ifs. What else? I think that's it.
In terms of what, that's it.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good start, right? So let's kind of use our knowledge in JavaScript to kind of help us learn C#. Right? So let's.
I'm really bad at JavaScript, so you go slowly.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I know your levels. Don't worry.
Okay.
Yeah. I know where all you at. I know. Don't worry. I have this isn't day one for me.
Gavin told you one.
Yes. Tells me y'all sucks. No.
Just out.
You wouldn't be wrong.
CSS.
I can't speak for everybody else, but I fit neatly within that.
No. I know that
I
JavaScript.
agree.
7 weeks of JavaScript is not enough to know JavaScript.
I'm
At least-
always one step away.
You don't feel like you know JavaScript.
I don't think I know it
You
at
all
all.
know more than you think you know. I'll say that.
Okay.
Y'all know more than you think you know.
For a bit.
I just made a hamburger
You
maybe
will.
half the steps I did in the first time.
So, anyways,
Yeah, class, program, static void main, but then your console.write line is Pascal case. So whenever we're writing actual C# language, I guess, code is when we would use Pascal case. Because I also noticed in the terminal it was just normal .NET run, .NET build. So the only time we need Pascal case is when we're actually writing C#.
correct. Yep. And case does matter.
My static voids separated, so
It's two different things. It means two different things. Static, we'll break into this now. Static means that there's only one of them. So no matter how big my program gets, I'm only going to have one main function. That's it. One main inside a program. That's it. Void is my return type. So main is just a function. That's all it is. We know what functions are in JavaScript, right? You know, it's a chunk of code that does something. Sometimes it returns something, sometimes it doesn't. In C#, we need to define the type of what the function is returning. So is it an integer, is it a float, is it a string, is it something like that?
And so the void, that's
Nuts.
the static typing.
Yes,
is
that is
what
a,
we're doing there.
that is a static type of saying, hey, I have a function. It's returning nothing on purpose. So whenever I call it, I'm not expecting a return type.
the strings are is that the argument?
And that's just a parameter.
It's not an array, empty array.
It is. It is an array. But we're saying this function takes an array. So we've had a whole bunch of talk about types, and we're seeing it now. So let's actually call out the types. So in JavaScript, if we wanted to make a variable, that's how you do comments in C#, by the way, if you couldn't figure that out.
Can you still use commands?
Yeah, yep, shortcuts are still the same. So in JavaScript, if I wanted to make a const score equal to 5, right? Or better, let score equals 5. Const team 1 or team 2 equals the Bobcats. Right? We have a strings team 2, we have a integer of score equals 5. That's all fine and dandy. In C#, we need to call out those types. So, if I wanted to create a variable called score, I'm going to go int score equals 5.
Because we're saying that it is
A
an
integer. Yes.
Could you also put a floating point there, or do you need a different type for that?
So if I put a floating point there, it's no longer an integer. An integer is any whole number. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
So there, would you need to define it as a float?
Yes.
Okay.
So there's 3 different types for floating points. Yeah, right? There's floating, there's float, there's decimal, and there's double.
The
So wait a
difference.
second. So float on this one, you're you're doing float because you want the decimal to hang.
Yep.
Right.
So float, decimal, and double are all for storing any number that has stuff after the decimal point. They all mean different things. They all technically do something different.
Why'd you put the F at the end?
Because I'm telling it that it's a float. It defaults to a. Nope. It defaults to a double. So this is our first instance of a compile time error. I hear a couple sighs. Give me 2 minutes. It'll get a lot easier. All right. So, but here's our first compile time error. Like, oh no, we see our red squiggles. If we go to run it, .net. Yeah, we'll just build it, .net build. We're gonna get an error. We're going, oh. Gotta save the file.
It worked.
Yeah, I was like, what? No, here, error. Says what it is. Type literal of double cannot be converted to float. Gives you a recommendation of how to fix it. It tells you what line it's on and what column it's on too.
Why did it tell you to use a capital F and you used a lowercase f?
Tells you something.
Yeah, right.
Does C# just tend to have
Nice.
very straightforward error codes like that?
Sometimes.
Sometimes. Okay. All right.
Sometimes. It's getting there. It's still a young project.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but you also see these things in yellow. Those are warnings. Like in JavaScript, you should fix those, but you don't have to.
So you just like defined float as FL, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
It's just okay.
Yeah. So like this is our first build error. Like this is just not a thing that happens in C#. They're like, hey, you're trying to take something that's of type double and store it in something that's of type float. So we have to convert it or change our type. So I'm going to comment this out because we're going to come back to that in a second. So to kind of illustrate this, let's say we wanted to do score does equal 5.5. You know, we're showing it the same issue where we're changing its type. It's like, wait a minute, that's not good. So now we need to kind of change the type, right? We can cast and we can convert. But in doing so, we're going to lose some precision, right? If we go from
Efficiency?
what?
Like efficiency, you mean? Like
Nope.
just you're writing extra?
Like precision. So we're going from 5.5 down to 5. So we're
Okay.
losing everything after the decimal. What is why we care about it? Because all these different number types, all that they're doing for us, it's telling the computer how to store the stuff inside of memory. That's why we have double float and decimal. They all store them in a different ways. And I honestly forget which one's which. I forget because at the end of the day, declaring your types like this is barbaric. Like I'll just be completely honest. Like it's a Baratheon level thing. Like you just don't do it. In C#, there's something. Okay, I'm going to comment all that out. There's something called var.
Bring var back.
Yeah, I am bringing var back, but this var is an awesome kind of var. Alright. So what this var does, this var is a inferred static typing. So it's looking at what's on the other side of the equal sign and going, hey, that's a 5. That is an integer. The type of score, what score is the type of, is now an integer.
Is that an example of a generic?
No.
No.
No, it uses generics under the hood to figure that out.
But it, in and of itself, is not.
Correct.
What score is another type of is an integer?
Yep.
So you're saying like it
It-
identifies it automatically.
It just works. Yeah. So now me as a developer, I don't care. But if I try to do something like this, I still get that compile time error. Where it's like, hey, you told me score is an integer, but you're trying to use that as a string now. No, stop. You can't do that.
Was that a joke about nan, not a number? Or was
Yeah, like nan is the most. Like I understand. Like once you understand why nan exists and really what nan is, it makes a lot of sense. It's the most stupidest thing to work with. Like nan doesn't equal nan.
And
You know that? Like nan does not equal nan.
a number is not equal to a number.
Yeah.
Well, it kind of makes sense.
It like on the surface you're like, hell? Like this is nuts. Nan should equal nan.
What?
But it's like, wait a minute. Nan doesn't equal nan because you don't know.
Nan is
You don't
not
know
nan.
what these actually
They're
are.
just not numbers. So they could be anything. They could be ducks, tables, strings. You know, they just they're just not numbers. So they're not equal to each other. I know. Nan is not a thing here. Undefined is not a thing here.
Really, those just don't show up in C#?
No, undefined is not a thing. So you know how like nan, undefined. Nope, it's all replaced by null. So because if something's undefined, you're going to get a compile time error saying, hey, this doesn't exist.
So what's the error you're getting right now? It says with the F.
So the error I'm getting right now says what?
Cannot implement convert type string to int.
So what does that mean to us?
It's not a number.
Right. So that means that we're trying to stick a string into an integer. That's what that means.
So can you put score equals 10, for example, score equals 12, as long as it's an integer, you can keep declaring
You
score.
can change
Yep.
score.
Score plus equals 6.
Do we need a semicolon now?
What happens when you run that?
Yes, we're back to semicolon land. So if y'all didn't like semicolons, tough.
I just got used to not doing it.
Yeah.
So now automatically put it with for years or something?
Unless you turned it
Turn it
off.
off.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So now I'm gonna run this. Score equals 5. Score equals 12. Score plus 6 equals 13. 13 plus 6 is 19.
19.
Yeah.
19.
Go run it. It'll print out 19. Hey, works.
19.
That is cool.
Yeah. So like all the math stuff is still there. We still have a math library. It still does all the same things.
Is like plus equals still a thing?
Yeah. Plus equals is still a
So
thing.
you just like overrode.
Plus equals still a thing.
Oh, it's right there. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So you just like overrode the original.
Yeah. Yep.
Sure.
So like all the same like JavaScript variable kind of things you're kind of used to doing are still there.
So when you said var score equals 5, it doesn't necessarily equal 5, it equals an integer.
That is 5.
So when you said score equals 12, it just overrode it equals 5?
Correct.
And it was able to do that because the type is still the same.
Correct.
Okay.
All right. All right.
Alright.
I'm gonna add something to our list here. So that is variables. So pretty much at the end of the day, we're always going to be using var with variables. There are some circumstances where you don't have to use it, but we'll get to those. We'll get to that bridge whenever we get there. But for today, it's always var. So loops. And then we'll do if statements next. If statements are good.
I love this.
Is there a ternary still?
There is. There's a
Is it the
lot.
same?
It is the same. There's also stuff on top of it that's even better.
Okay.
We'll get to the even better stuff. I don't want to flood you with too much knowledge
The
today.
ternary, the question mark?
That's the like
Yeah,
shorthand for it though.
yeah. There's something called the Elvis operator, which is even, I know, right?
That sounds cool.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and it's like that because it's 2 question marks. So see, the eyes are the dots in the hair, so it's the Elvis operator.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a bit of a stretch.
It's really not. Have you seen Elvis? So, if statements. So we know that there's integers, floats, double decimals for types. There's also a Boolean type. Bool is running.
Just bool it.
No way. Is that actually how it's written?
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah. It's the bool type.
That's cool.
But again, we know that we can just do var, like good developers. So while loops, right?
So are you saying we should use var instead of typing these things?
Yeah, just use var. It'll make your lives a lot easier. I'm just
Okay.
showing you like what the type is now.
Okay, so we need to know these types, but we won't be using them?
You will be using them. Give me
Just not yet. Okay.
yes. Give me 3 minutes.
For these next 3 minutes.
For these next 3
we just
minutes,
use var.
var is your world. You need to know what the types.
Var is your world.
Yes, for the next 3 minutes, we're going to use var, but after that, we're going to have to know what those types are. Because if you remember, public void main string array args, we're going to have to use those to define the types that get passed in and out of our functions. So, it's the same syntax.
Well, it's crazy.
Yeah, for a while loop, nothing too crazy. Like while score is less than 12 or less than 22, score plus plus. While loops are still the same.
While
Yep.
loops.
Yep, while loops are still the same. For loops. You all remember for loops?
I honestly don't know if I've ever seen while. I don't know.
I don't know if you all covered while loops.
Yeah, for each.
I think we were told that they exist, and that's as far as
Then we
I
went to for each after.
Yeah, while loops, they exist. It's just like, hey, while this is true, while this expression equals to true, some Boolean true value,
Mm-hmm.
run this chunk of code.
So that still falls within Boolean logic then?
Yep.
So that's gonna be like 13 because you had scores 12, right?
Yeah, so no matter what, when this is done, this will run as long as score is less than 21.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
So
that can be a way to end the loop then.
same syntax in JavaScript. It should feel kind of familiar, right? It's
A bit.
yeah, like it's curly brackets, it's semicolons. For loop looks exactly the same. You see that there's an int here?
Yeah.
We could safely change that to var. If we wanted to. Like that.
Do we want to?
Sure. I say sure because at the end of the day it doesn't matter. It goes
Okay.
to what your coding guidelines say whenever you get there.
So what the boss man tells us?
Exactly. Because when you write code, you should always write code in the style of the code base that's already there.
Or
So,
they
like-
just work exactly the same.
Yep, it's starting off with I equals 0, while I is less than 10, increment I by 1 every time.
And the while is the if statement.
Watch, and then for, and I want to point out I. What other loops do we have? Is that it?
Wow. So for
That's-
each.
Okay, we'll get to a for each in a second.
I mean, there's different methods, but I think they're still technically for loops, like map and stuff. Are those,
Yeah, we still do have those.
But is that still considered a for loop? Or is it a different?
It's a different thing, technically. I think.
Okay.
I would probably. It's like the second topic of loops.
Okay.
They're like, oh, you all know the idea of loops? Let's break that kind of thing. So that's pretty much the basic loop. It's all there. There is more once we get to arrays and data structures, stuff like that.
So we still have like map, filter, reduce, stuff like that?
Yep.
Are there more that do not exist in JavaScript?
Yes. So much more.
I don't know if I like that.
I do.
I'm sure it's good once I understand how it works.
But actually, with the newest versions of JavaScript, they are catching up to what's offered in .NET.
Okay.
So like the any and all that's in JavaScript, I saw that's floating around on the cohort channel. You're shaking your head yes, so I'm not crazy.
I was just looking up when I was trying to do that
Yeah.
where I had a whole list of everything.
Yeah, so like that stuff, a lot of that stuff comes from inspiration from what happens here. Not saying it's one-to-one because I kind of did it at the same time, but this has been around for a bit longer. So that's loops, nothing too crazy. If statements, the exact same syntax as before.
It's if else.
Yeah, it's if scores is less than 23, console.log, team 1 wins.
Do you need the system before?
You don't need to, but since I'm using a shortcut, which
Okay. So the snippet automatically puts that.
Yep.
So what does that mean? The system.
So CW is the shortcut. That's what you'll need.
Okay.
What does that mean? That means I'm going to the system namespace. In there's an object called console that I'm accessing. And on that object console, there's a method called writeLine that I'm calling. I'm calling it because of the parentheses. And whatever I pass it is what I want to print out. Of course, the logic is nonsensical, but it's the same structure. If, else if, and else. Nothing too crazy? I don't think.
Only difference there is system not
Yeah.
line. So
Yeah.
There's that, and this requires the semicolons, which is gonna mess me up.
Yeah, right. So formatted, we did ifs, scores, doubles, types, variables. Any thoughts on what we've done so far?
Just generous.
Mostly makes sense so far. I haven't felt the need to cry or anything. So.
It's exactly the same, just different syntax at this point.
At this point.
At this point.
Yes.
At this point.
Var is cool. Bar is cool.
var is like a selling point for me on the language.
What is? Why was it that we weren't using var in JavaScript? I don't remember the difference between let and var.
So let is a scoped variable. So
Oh,
var
whereas
technically has it to like everywhere.
Okay.
And that's polluting your global scope. You don't want to do that, but it's like it gets funky.
So let is more specific.
Let just says, hey, this isn't my current scope. So whatever set of squiggles I'm in, that's my current scope. It's only available there.
So that's why when we want to define globally, we go to the top of it.
Correct.
Okay.
Set of
Makes
squiggles, you mean like curly
Yeah.
braces? Okay.
Yeah, I call these squiggles.
Alright,
So,
cool. Just
Is
that's good to know.
var scoped
Var is scoped.
in C sharp
In C sharp, var is scoped.
in the same way that let is scoped?
Correct.
Okay.
Neat.
So JavaScript, constant let. C sharp, var.
Alright.
While we're on the constant let, if we want to declare a constant value, so it is, don't need that. Yeah. So it's const, we have to tell it, hey, this can't change.
Then you have to type it.
We have to type in what its type is.
So that can't
That can't automatically
work
know.
with generics or whatever.
Correct.
It can't figure it out. You have to tell it
Right,
what it is.
because what this does, as this is a variable, this actually gets like a chunk of memory that can be dynamically edited. This actually gets like compiled into the binary as a static value. So it's like, hey, what is this? I need to know what this is so I can build against it.
This is pretty like iterative. Like every time you write string, you're writing like string essentially. And then unless you're using var,
Yeah.
of course, which like it knows, but it sounds like there's like a lot of like practicing what you're.
Yeah, like there's a lot of extra ceremony. And you're being a bit more explicit.
Yeah, that's interesting.
JavaScript trusts you, the developer, to know what you're doing.
Alright, man, I'll give it a shot.
Yeah, it's like, oh, awesome. You want me to do this, this, and this? It doesn't make sense, but yeah, I can do it. Sure, I'll find a way to do it. C sharp, on the other hand, is exactly the opposite. It says, I don't trust you. You don't know what you're doing. You have to do things my way, so I know exactly what you mean.
Is there ever a situation where we would want to type something instead of using var?
Sometimes,
Usually no, though.
usually not. Default values are a thing. So like when I create a new integer, like if I just do like int num, like what's its value?
Probably 0.
Right. If I do boolean hello, what's its value?
No.
Nope, false.
False. Oh, wait.
It's just its default value.
Okay.
So like
False.
boolean integer.
Oh, it defaults to false.
It
If
defaults
you
to
don't
false.
tell it that it is something else, it's false.
Yes.
Okay.
Or
So
like
if you
hello,
say-
it's true.
Yeah. So but if I do hello equals true, now
Then
it's true.
It is true. Okay.
Yeah. So there's default values. So sometimes you want to use default values to kind of help program around. But that's like, no. For today, no.
So var is like they. Var is like
Var.
the god of C sharp.
Yeah. Yeah. var is like, if you need to learn like one thing today, it's be comfortable with what var is
Like
doing.
a universal identifier.
Yeah, it's all your variables. It's handling all your typing for variables for you.
What about var? So var can be a boolean too.
var can be Boolean, var can be anything. It figures it out for you. So that being said, I know, right? Whew, a lot of mental gymnastics here.
Yeah.
Functions and methods, right? So now we're going to take our var that we're comfortable with, cozy with it now. We're going to step out of that zone for our function. So let's create a function.
You can't just do var function.
No. Well, technically you could, but when we will.
Wait a minute, meaning a function can be
A
what sort of
variable.
variable?
So you know
Is
how
that thing in JavaScript too?
I was going to say, so you know how in JavaScript functions are treated as first-class variables?
Well,
They're
I know
I was
that.
really bad.
Oh, wait. Because you
You
would say
define a
let
function, then you
something
call-
equals and then use the arrow syntax and
Yeah.
oh.
So functions, yeah. So we're going to have a little aha moment real fast. Functions in JavaScript are also just chunks of data. That's why you can pass them around. You know how your add event handlers and stuff like that? Yeah. Your add event handlers, they take a function. That's you passing in a function as a chunk of data.
So a function is a value stored in
Yes.
a variable, but it's not always stored in a variable.
In
Or
JavaScript,
is it in JavaScript? It is.
yes. In C# it's not.
Oh, because you always have to do function equal is this or let
Yeah.
is this.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know.
Calm down. It's okay.
So in C# you can do that. Functions are also first order systems. They are also treated as data. That's something called delegates. That's something we'll get to tomorrow night's homework. But there's another way to write a function. And it's out here. This is more the traditional way of doing it. We're going to call it static for now. Just kind of accept that. Static is just a thing. And the normal flow of how it goes is what's my return type, what's my name, and then what parameters.
So that's function.
Yep, so that's a function kind of thing. That's kind of always the structure. Those three things, the return type, the name, and the parameters, make up something called a function signature. Just like a signature in real life, that means that you can only have one function, you can only have one signature. We can overload it, we can override it, so it has different stuff, but each one has to be unique. So let's look at something real fast. So if I wanted to create a function for summing two numbers, something really simple, right? The logic writes itself. I want to return,
Int.
I want to return an integer. I want to call it sum,
So, sure.
and then I want to pass it two parameters.
It would be index plus.
Yeah, we'll call them A and B.
There we go.
And of course, we have our return statement. A plus B. Ah, if I could type, that would be glorious.
Why is it auto?
So you notice how it's not right, how we have some red squiggles here? So we're missing a couple things here. This is where the typing of the variables comes into play. You know how I said 10 minutes ago, hey, var is our world, and 10 minutes ago it won't be our world? Now it's no longer our world. I'm sorry. So now for our parameters, we have to specify the type of what values that we want to pass in. So for this, we want to pass in two integers, right? So int A, then int B. Now everything's hunky-dory.
So you can declare int.
Yep.
as a-
So A is an integer, and B is an integer.
So it knows what type of
Yep.
parameter is being passed.
Yep.
So what's it gonna return? A plus B.
AB.
So
So
return A plus B.
the return type is almost always repeated within the parameters. Is that what you're saying?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. These things are just kind of coincidence that they're all integers. If we had another example,
I see. Okay.
like
String or something.
yeah, like you could return a string, you could return an integer, you can return a boolean. We can make something called static Boolean is number higher than 5.
Static again, meaning that it only shows up once.
Yep.
Okay.
So this takes an integer number and returns is num greater than 5. Return to me true or false, whether it's greater than or equal to 5. So I can call this down in main. Where's my function? So I can call this down in main, with a number var random equals math dot a little bit easier than JavaScript to create a random number. Then I say, hey, is number higher than 5? And then I'm going to pass it rand.
What does the dot next method do?
So I'm creating a new random instance.
Mhm.
So random is a class that's inside the system. So I'm saying, hey, give me a new instance of it. So do we know how random numbers work? Ish.
Is that a trick question?
No.
It's a trick question.
Sometimes in the JavaScript stuff, it kind of gets into like how random numbers actually work. But like we're saying, hey, give me a new instance of a random number, and give me the next one between 0 and 10.
That's-
Instead of doing like math.random times the max
and then
ceiling, math.floor.
set the-
So the next is just defining a range?
Yeah.
Is that what that methodology or that method will always do?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's always going to be a random number between 0 and 10.
Okay.
So then, let me, we do have the right line, so if you run that right now, it's gonna pick a random number between 0 and 10. If
It's
it's greater than 5,
Yep.
it will return, our right line will be true.
Yep.
It won't be the random number.
so
In the future.
let's print out the random number, and let's print out whether it's higher than 5 or not. Does that sound good?
Yes.
So I want to print out your random number is, and then string concatenation,
Right.
still a thing. Remember string interpolation
Uh-huh.
with the backticks?
Yes.
Yeah.
In C#, it's a bit easier. So if I wanted to do that, $sign at the beginning of your string. All strings are double quotes, by the way.
Oh, no single quotes then?
Nope.
Okay.
Single quotes mean something else. So $sign, and then wherever I want to put it, I just do squiggles. So it's sort of like JavaScript.
Similar, but you don't need the whole thing. within
Right.
the-
You just say, hey, we're going to have some string interpolation going on here. That's it. I like this so much. I learned this before I learned it in JavaScript. And when I got to JavaScript, I was so mad.
Why are you making this?
Because I was like, why do I need backticks? Why do I need to repeat the $sign every word? Gosh. So now this will print out your random number is bleh, whatever it is, and then it'll say whether it's higher than 5 or not.
That's awesome.
So let's go through and kind of, before I run this, I just kind of want to comment out all my other console.write lines. Okay. So .NET run.
Takes a little while to compile.
Sometimes it does, yeah. I missed one somewhere because I forgot to save it, but my random number is 2 and false.
Why did it write all the 0 to 9?
Because I forgot to save my program.
Oh. That was up there.
And my number is.
Is it better practice to do what you did there with is number higher than 5? You declared that as a function above, and then you
Yep.
called it down here, or would it be alright to just write the function there?
So it has to be declared outside of main,
Yes.
but inside a program. Those rules will change as we go, but for tonight's homework, nudge, nudge, wink, 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 outside of main, but inside a program. Outside of main, inside a program. That's all fine and dandy. Like we can create static values, with the random numbers, we can do stuff. But what about I/O? What about input and output? Because remember, going back to what we talked about when we started, the core of this is that we're going to be accepting something, right? And then returning something. So we need something to kind of manage that. We're not going to get to those core concepts yet. We need to kind of start working with, hey, what types of things? We've got to start passing in data, start passing out data. So how do we know how to read out data, right? Wherever that is. System.console.writeLine, right? How do we read data now? What? Console dot read line.
Yes. Thank God that's
Yeah, right?
It makes me so happy.
So this is saying, hey, take read line, take whatever the user types in. They're going to type stuff in. They're going to hit enter, take whatever they typed in, and store it in a variable called input.
Is it always input?
No, you can name this whatever you want. I just like doing something meaningful, and input's a meaningful name for me. So I can say, hey, console.writeLine. Console.writeLine. You typed in input.
Say,
Now, so now we can read in stuff, we can read out stuff.
So now what if in you typed in hey there, what if you wanted the hey there to print in quotes?
So something like this. Like you typed in hey there, but like not so crazy.
Yeah. Would you put the quotes inside of the or just have it literally okay.
This is your escape character. It says don't treat the next character as part of the language, treat it as treat the next character as part of the string.
So then you're gonna run into a problem there.
Yeah, I need to add
You're
a
missing a quote, right?
Yep.
Okay.
so
Why does it take so long for such a small program to compile?
it's doing a lot of stuff. Hello world, welcome to .NET. What's up?
Okay.
Okay. How are you feeling so far?
Could be worse.
Could be much worse.
It will be.
It will be.
What's that?
So the read line,
7 minutes. Yeah.
the read line is really just like, is that only for console at this point? Like,
Yep. That's only for console.
Okay.
But the whole idea of we're waiting for something, because once I run this, it's going to compile and run, then it's going to sit here and wait. It's going to wait for something to happen. In this case, that something to happen is the user to type something in and then enter. Whenever we get to actually building servers, our server's going to stand up and run, and it's going to wait for something to happen.
In this case, it's input.
Right.
Input is what it's waiting for.
Mhm.
Whatever you type.
Yeah.
So when you type something, like just say what's up, or
Mm-hmm.
I saw that in yellow, it gave
It gave a couple warnings.
Something.
Yeah, if I just build it, it'll give me a couple of warnings. Or it should at least.
today.
Not today. .NET Run.
But it said something about the constant name.
Yeah.
What was that?
Well, let's check out the warnings and see what they mean together. So if I run it, is it in yellow? Yeah. Oh, figure out what's on now.
Maybe that. They're like, nope.
It's gonna be a fun teaching moment. I'm sad now.
What about where it says problems too?
So but what it is, you'll see sometimes these green squiggles in VS Code. Those are warnings. Those are kind of like, hey, what are you doing? Like, this is a weird thing. So like here, what does that say?
Was never used.
Yeah. So it's saying, hey, you're giving me a constant. I'm doing stuff with it. I'm allocating memory. I'm using resources for it. But you're never using it. Are you sure you want to make this? It's like your appendix. You know, it's there. You don't need it. So
Sure you want to remove it?
yeah.
When the server's running, you said it's waiting. Is it actually just constantly running?
Yeah. It's just kind of like saying like going.
Okay, and so I was wondering if it went to sleep until the first character was typed.
So we'll get there. We'll kind of refine that answer. For right now, no. It kind of just waits there. It's always like, hey, go on. So we covered logic. You know, the logic is roughly the thing. We have inputs and outputs. You know, how can we feed our program data? And we covered how to make functions so we can reuse our logic. We covered typing, so we can be kind of simplified with typing, kind of what that means. Yeah, how are we feeling?
Pretty good.
I'm ready to start working
I need more coffee.
Dude, that's always their answer. We need more coffee. So, for the next, your homework tonight is you will be building me a small little console application that guesses what number the user is thinking of. Right? We give you the algorithm for it.
C# can read minds now.
It can. It uses something called a binary search to help narrow down what number that you're guessing.
Is it like a sorting algorithm?
No.
Oh, is this like is it between
Yep.
these numbers and
Yep.
then you narrow it down
So,
to
like,
between these numbers?
You as the user, so the computer will go, hey, pick a number between, or think of a number between 1 and 0 and 100. Actually, let's do this real fast. So, Alan, think of a number between 0 and 100. Don't tell me what it is. Write it down, though, so it's fair. I'm not going to look. So it's between 0 and 100. I know that for a fact. You just tell me whether your number is higher or lower. Is your number 50?
Higher.
Right? Is your number 75?
Higher.
Is your number 86?
Lower.
Is your number 80?
Lower.
Is your number 77?
Yes.
So in that case, Alan is the user, going to type in higher or lower. Me as the program, I'm going to use this idea to figure out what. So let's look at what I did. I start off with a big range. Now, the idea behind a binary search is that I want to quickly reduce my search area down to the smallest possible thing. So in a brute force algorithm, if I had to guess that range, I'd go, hey, Alan, is your number 0? Hey, Alan, is it 1? Is it 2? Is there? That's a lot of stuff.
Technically works. But yeah,
It at 100%, it'll give me the solution.
it will give you the answer.
Yes, but it's not efficient. So what a binary search is, the binary search says, hey, I want to cut down my search space as fast as possible to as small as possible. So we do that by cutting it into half. Going, hey, is your number 50? Yes,
Higher,
no.
lower.
Higher or lower?
Boom, discovered.
Yep. Now I know instead of one between 0 and 100, I know it's between 50 and 100. Now I go, hey, 75.
Cut it in half.
Yep. Then I go 86. Even that's close enough to be halfway, you know. Now I've cut it down to, hey, I know your number is between 86 and 75. So I'm doing this by cutting the range in half every single time.
Why did you pick 86 instead of 85?
A, I'm bad at math, and B, 86 is close enough.
Fair.
I'll just be honest. But you should all be cutting the range in half. And really, because halfway between 75 and 100, that's 25, so it's 12 and a half, right?
You round it up.
So I rounded up.
Your math was actually correct.
How about that? Some people like to round down. In your algorithm, either way,
Okay.
because it's not gonna really matter. Like if I would have said, "Hey, is it 87?" You know, no, it's still lower. Like that. Those edge cases don't matter.
Awesome.
So you'll be programming that into a console application tonight for your homework. It also includes setting up your dev machine, which is as simple as going to the .NET website for the installer link that's in the homework and saying install. Like it's that simple. And then also the third part of your homework, I know, right? Because 2 things is not nearly enough. No, third part of your homework is to really nail down your wireframes. We heard a lot of this morning about like, hey, this is a wireframe, and my wireframes I'm still not there yet.
I turned mine in.
That's awesome. I'm still working on it. So it's like, hey, here's some extra time for you to really nail this down. We are in week 8, right? Demo day, not to scare y'all.
Right around 4 weeks.
You know, not to say we're on one hand yet, but we're on one hand.
Yeah.
So
What's scary is I'm supposed to be getting employed to do this
Oh no.
in almost one hand.
yeah.
Oh, that's
So
crazy.
just to give y'all kind of a concept of like the high level like flow of the course here, is today and tomorrow we're going to be working C# skills, kind of what the basics is. Wednesday and Thursday we are going to be doing SQL skills,
So is Postgres is a
SQL database engine.
okay.
Wait till
SQL is that a format like a data structure?
SQL is a database. The best way for that is a database specification.
So it's like a type of database.
Correct.
And then
Postgres is a flavor,
Postgres is something that makes
a SQL database.
a database of that type.
Yep. So like
Okay. And there's also
Postgres-
like MySQL and NoSQL and things like that, right?
There's
And those
also-
are engines.
Yes, so Postgres is a database engine. MySQL is a database engine. NoSQL is kind of the opposite of SQL. So it's not a database engine itself. It's
Oh.
just yeah, the plot thickens. You know?
Yeah.
But that's Wednesday and Thursday. We're going to be talking about databases and learning that. And then Monday, we're going to start building our own APIs and also tying back together databases. So this week is about putting a lot of tools inside of our tool belt. So next week, we're going to kind of put them all together in a big pot and start to mix them together. How's that sound?
That's great.
So your homework will be signed by the end of lunch. Videos will be up on somewhere, and notes will be somewhere on that list.
Go.
So we'll see you too.
Yeah, review it too. Review it too. Review it too.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Time to take my computer to scout.
So, yeah.